So I'm going to start it. I'm going to start it off talking about predicting the future with scenario planning and predictive analytics. So from OnePacific, to our view of the CFO and his or her teams that do the finance and accounting, the planet, are really the owners of the business model and best positioned to lead the planning and forecasting. And the reason we say that the CFO and the teams are the owners of the business model is, if you're doing that role, you know how all the pieces of the business fit together. You understand which levers you can pull here to have an impact here. So you really know what makes the business model work, and you're best positioned to explain that to the other parts of the business and determine the best ways forward. So that's and some of the leading edge technologies provide more capabilities and more tools and more options than you've had in the past. And I'll talk about that a little later. And then, right now everyone's doing planning. And generally what we see with most clients, it's on an annual basis, but we want to talk about scenario planning and then coupling that with predictive analytics, because that's really at the forefront of finance and accounting at the moment. So analytics and scenario planning. So we say it's at the forefront, and here's just a quick chart to show from a survey from Gartner what other finance, accounting, and planning and analytics teams are doing. And you can see it's quite interesting. Really in the top 5 of some of the areas we're going to talk about today. So coming up over the next year or so, more teams are planning to look at advanced data analytics. So that's where the predictive analytics falls in. Improving business partnership skills. So the scenario planning is a way to tighten the partnership with the business. Iterative forecasting process, as we'll talk about, the scenario planning requires more of an iterative process. And then obviously the next one is scenario planning. So this really is areas that people are going to be focused on over the next couple of years. Now, in general, they rank it as somewhat or extremely difficult. It's more on the high end, but I think what you'll see with the software, particularly with the NetSuite planning and budgeting solution, it actually doesn't have to be that hard once you have the data. And what we've seen with our clients is, if you're running NetSuite or you're running another solution, it doesn't matter. Over time with your ERP system, you've really built up a lot of data, and that's and it's valuable, right? It makes a difference to the company, and that's what you can leverage when you look at these tools. So let's talk about scenario planning for just a minute. So in a recent McKinsey study with CFOs, so 90% indicated that they're using at least 3 scenarios to support their planning. So, and with some automated tools and data, you can do a lot more than 3 if it makes sense for your business. And we believe at OnePacific that companies that use scenario planning are more likely to manage through changes. And because of that, they'll be more profitable than their competitors in the long run who don't do that planning as well. So really, it's a method of visualizing the future, or as we say, different versions of the future. So I can say this might happen, or this might happen, or this might happen. And then developing strategies with the business in partnership with the business. And then most important, executing on those strategies. So some of the benefits include increased resiliency, tougher organization, stronger financial position, more flexibility in the organization because you planned ahead a little bit. And then we believe increased profitability compared to competitors who probably aren't planning so well. And where that comes in is because you've modeled out the scenarios, you can be more profitable as you go through them, depending on what they are. So it says it's actually receiving renewed attention. You'll see it a lot on the internet, and we have clients asking about it. And there's a few reasons for this. Obviously, the business environment for many firms is changing. It can become more uncertain. I think no one would argue with that. It could be disruption caused by new technologies impacting existing businesses, new models, and certainly politics and environmental factors, which we've seen at least in the last year and a half. So what does this do? It places more focus on the planning methods, right? So how am I going to do my planning? Do I need to do it more often? Do I need to look at different scenarios? And then that puts more emphasis on what tools are available to support that increased planning process. And now scenario planning is not new. It's been around for decades, honestly. But the increasing level of uncertainty has kind of meant people are looking at it a little closer and how do I get involved with it and how do I do it? And there's some very current examples. So companies are looking at it. You can look at it at a macro level or a micro level. So Examples might be, what's my forecast if the economy changes kind of up or down one way or another? So that's more of a macro view. More on a micro view, and we have clients doing this today, and I saw from the poll, a lot of people are using Excel, but how do I model out supply chain shocks? That's a huge issue right now. What's that going to do to my lead time? How does it impact my profitability, my customer relationships? Raw material costs seem to be rising a lot lately, so how does that impact what's going to happen to my business? Labor availability. So if I'm heavily dependent on labor, how can I model out the impact of either labor costs or just availability? I mean, I was recently in the US, and I noticed a lot of retail establishments aren't open during normal working hours the whole day because they don't have the labor availability. So, the ability to model that out and see what the impact is and make decisions. Do I keep some places open? Do I close some places? How can I handle that? So there's a lot of areas right now where different scenarios and understanding the impact of the business, we think makes a lot of sense. But it's not a one-off, right? The way things are moving these days, it's not something you can do once a year. My annual fall planning cycle, I'll come up with a plan, management will approve it, and then we'll go against that plan for the rest of the year. That doesn't work. And I think we saw that in 2020 for sure, during the pandemic. So it is an ongoing cycle. And because of that, it's really, really hard to do that with a manual spreadsheet-based process. You're constantly trying to update spreadsheets, incorporate new data, incorporate new projections. It's just not that efficient. And also having direct integration with the finance system and the budgeting data is required, right? So I can suck it down at any point in time. I can run my scenarios. I can update the data. I can see where I am, and I can work with the business on what the next steps are. You can look at integrating external data as well, and that can provide more realistic plans, as the correlation can be modeled. So perhaps it's income data for different geographic areas that I want to correlate to my sales data or operations data. So that's hard to do in Excel, but it's certainly feasible with some of the different tools, and especially NetSuite planning and budgeting, which Sanjo will show. And I think this is what's really important for our clients. We work with a lot of clients that are kind of medium, small size. Just a few years ago, tools like this were pretty much the domain of large companies, large organizations, Fortune 100, Fortune 500 organizations. And the training was high, the cost was high. But now that's not the case anymore. It's within reach of almost every organization. So it gives the capability to businesses that just didn't have it anymore. So it's a great opportunity now to take advantage of it, I think. So that's scenario planning, but then you can tie that into what we call predictive analytics as well. So what's predictive analytics? In general, people are using it already, but finance has trailed other functions like marketing, customer focused, supply chain, operations focused, and other areas in using advanced analytics. But now, the amount of data that's available and the software capabilities are changing the equation. So especially if you've had an ERP system for a while, you've collected a lot of data that can be used in the planning process, incorporating some of the predictive analytics technology. So this is actually, I think this is an interesting slide. Predictive analytics uses some quantitative techniques to use past information to predict the future. Right. So you with the technology now, you don't have to have a data scientist on board to try to model this and run this for you, because the software can take care of a lot of it. And the chart on the right, I think, is pretty interesting. And we see clients go through different stages of this as well. So most clients, frankly, are in this kind of the bottom, the easier sgive descriptive analytics. So this becomes, here's my report, my Excel, what happened. Maybe I can figure out what the problem is, or then I have some alerts that give me an action to do. But this is relatively simple, and it provides value. But the farther up you go, the more value the business gets, but a little more harder it is. So here we're in the kind of the second tier, where we think is the next big area on the predictive side. So this applies some statistical analysis to your forecasting. You can extrapolate a bit, say, well, what happens if this continues? And then you might say, well, I don't want this to continue. How do we fix this? And then, modeling what will happen next. So this is kind of early machine learning, and then you can get into more advanced stuff later. But this is a great place to get started on predictive analytics. So how does it support the planning process, though? So it does go hand in hand with that. So I think if you look at the chart on the right, what we're really showing is, so I've got I'm doing my planning cycle, I've got my reporting, so here's what's happened. And then I can put together my plan. So these could be different scenarios of where we want to go. or another forecast of what can happen. But then the predictive part adds another level of, based on the past data, here's what you might actually expect. So looking at the delta between these, it helps to impact what strategy you go forward with the business. So the data goes in, and then the predictive part models that and uses that to come out with a predictive plan. Now, it doesn't mean that's what's actually going to happen. It just gives you another set of data to decide how accurate my forecast is, or what do I need to do to make my forecast and get where it needs to be. And this is interesting. So in a recent trend service, so 50% of surveyed companies are planning to leverage AI in the coming years. And that could be, AI, people also use that for machine learning, which a lot of this is based on. And 70% of the companies said that it's very high or very high value. So I think, as we'll see in a minute, it's actually not that hard to get started with when you have the data. And Sanjay will share some of that with us. So I'm going to turn it over to him in just a second. But just as a quick introduction to OnePacific, if you're not familiar with us, we focus on cloud solutions for business. We're based in Hong Kong, and we serve clients in Asia and actually all over the world. A lot of our clients have offices all over the world. And we focus on Oracle-NetSuite as far as enterprise resource planning and budgeting go. That's the solutions that we recommend and we implement. So we've been doing this for over 10 years, Asia-based and global clients. And then I think we're specialized in global projects, and we're recognized to be a leader in that space by Oracle-NetSuite. Very important for everyone. We also believe that implementations have to have a clear business objective. So when we work with clients, and we have a couple of clients we're working with right now on the NetSuite planning and budgeting tool, define your objectives up front. What do you want to get out of it? How do you want to help it benefit the business? And then we work with your teams to make that happen. So that's a quick introduction, I think, to scenario planning and predictive analytics. Again, I'm happy to talk offline and more details on those and how people can work with that later. And so you can always send us, we'll do a poll later, but you can always send us a message over chat as well. So and we'll do questions at the end also. So I'm going to turn it over to Sanjay now. Sanjay, are you ready?
Yeah, mate.
Okay. Let's go. So it's all yours. So Sanjay is a solution principal with Oracle, and he's going to talk about the tool. Does a lot. It's a full suite of planning and budgeting, and you'll see some of that. But I think we're gonna focus on the scenario planning and the predictive analytics. But if there's more things you'd like to see around the tool and the solution, or how it works with NetSuite, if you're running NetSuite, just let us know, and we can do that at a later session or in person.
Yeah. Thanks, Don, for the amazing overview. Thank you, everyone, for giving us this opportunity to present the NetSuite planning and budgeting solutions. I'll spend a few slides before actually jumping into the system to set the context of what we are discussing today. So what is NetSuite planning and budgeting? NetSuite planning and budgeting is NetSuite's comprehensive planning, budgeting, and all the management reporting solution, all of which is available from within a single integrated platform, which provides a single pane of view of the business performance, which helps the management take informed strategic decisions. And how it does that? It has got inbuilt data integration, accounting, reporting frameworks, all of which helps to translate the impact of the business drivers, like your different SKUs that you sell in the various customer segments, and translating the impact of those business drivers onto the financial plan, the three-way linked income statement, and the balance sheet, which drives the cash flow. It is seamlessly integrated with NetSuite. Of course, it's a NetSuite planning and budgeting module, which allows you to create a reconciled and updated plan based on the latest historical performance of the close period of the books. But another key aspect of the solution is that it is also data source agnostic, which allows us to seamlessly interface with any and every upstream system from where we need to source key financial and non-financial information. Both are required for building your forecast and plans. It is a true cloud solution, which can not only be accessed on the web browsers, the mobiles and tablets, but it also has comprehensive integration with the full MS Office toolset, including Excel, PowerPoint, Word, with the capability of generating reports and PDFs. It has also got audit trails and workflow enabled to ensure robust data governance. So the global pandemic, as Don suggested, has literally transformed the way we run businesses today. So no 2 days are the same. Hence the need to literally re-strategize and fine-tune our plans every day as the market changes. It's very, very, very important. And this situation gets like particularly tricky for the wholesale distributors and the retailers, who at times are left at the mercy of the geopolitical events, and hence the emphasized need of planning the different scenarios. What if again we go into another phase 3 lockdown, which will block my shipments for the next 4 weeks? How much should I like stock up my inventory to prevent the stockhouse on one hand, but also how much can I reduce the wastage, and how can I like optimize the inventory storage space? And also where I can find new opportunities to grow my businesses. So today we are going to show you the predictive analytics and the scenario modeling engines of NetSuite planning and budgeting from a sales and operations planning context. So you'd see how using NetSuite planning and budgeting, or NSPB, you can make sense of your existing data and make like reasonable predictions in the future. And further, we'll like also demonstrate how you can easily like spin up like individual scenarios as like sandboxes, and how you can test your assumptions across all those scenarios, all of which will enable you to make informed strategic decision quickly and easily for you to keep up to speed with the wildly changing markets. So here today, to set the context of the demo, let's quickly go through what a sales and operations planning process looks like. So it all starts with the sales planning. Sales managers are given quotas based on which they create a plan of how much they must sell to which customers. Thus, the sales planning process generates a demand. So the procurement manager then evaluates the demand, and then based on the supply lines, he or she gauges the feasibility of the demand, and hence create a supply plan. How much to procure from which vendor, with like what lead times necessary. So for a manufacturing company, the procurement manager needs to collaborate with the production manager in the manufacturing department to check the viability of the demand. But that also gives insights to the production manager as how much should be produced, which areas need to be optimized. So once the demand is validated against the supply, it generates a reconciled sales and operations plan. And the key outcome of a like reconciled sales and operations plan is a fully fledged, robust financial plan, which shows the impact on the margins, the cost of acquiring and storing inventory, the net profit, and the resulting cash flows, all key KPIs required to make informed strategic decisions. Thus, a robust and comprehensive sales and operations plan is made possible by the various departments and functions of the business working as a team within an organization, helping management set the correct strategic direction. Using NetSuite planning and budgeting sales and operations planning framework, we can bring to fruition all these aspects of the processes as we just described here. We can create a plan going down as detailed as individual SKUs, but we also have the capability of adjusting the forecast like from a top-down manner and seeing the impact instantaneously on the financial plan, all from within the same integrated platform. So here I would be logging in as an integrated business planner in the NetSuite planning and budgeting system. So I'll switch myself from the slides to the system. So before we actually jump into the system, let me just spend a few seconds on the landing page. So on the left-hand side, you'd see various notifications and announcements, which is all related to the planning processes. This provides useful guidelines and insights, and also important like milestone informations for task completion. And I can also bookmark some of the important reports and dashboards in this billboard. And on the right-hand side, you'd see various widgets or applets. So each of these widgets allow you to work with the specific area of the planning processes. And in today's demonstration, we would be looking at the integrated sales and operations planning application. So every application within NetSuite planning and budgeting solution consists of a set of input templates where you can upload a bunch of assumptions, and a set of reports where you can validate the outcome of applying those assumptions. And everything is neatly set up in workbenches. So starting with the pricing, the demand, then you can work with the assumptions of our supply. And finally, we can see the impact of the demand and the supply assumptions on the financial plan. So everything is working in like a progressive manner for you to build up the assumptions finally through to the financial impact and seeing the analysis in dashboards and charts. So the sales and operations plan data that's shown here is for like a wholesale distributor who sells different computer and hardware accessories in various like customer segments, enterprises, mid-markets, and SMBs. But this can easily be applied to any like manufacturing companies or retail companies by tweaking the templates and reports to accommodate the necessary drivers. So starting with the pricing assumptions, as you can see here in this template. So we can build very detailed pricing assumptions by the product categories, as well as by the individual SKUs, as you can see in the rows. And also for each SKU, we can attach multiple pricing strategies, as you can see in the column. And all these pricing strategies would be the basis for us to create the various scenarios against which we would test out these assumptions. So these pricing strategies at the onset is preceded with the pricing levels as defined in the NetSuite ERP or in your like core finance system or any like other systems where you maintain the pricing information, and those information can be pulled through into this template via like direct integration. And along with the product SKUs and like the segmentation setups and the different currencies that they operate in, the true value that NetSuite Planning and Budgeting brings to the table is allowing businesses to model various pricing strategies and understand the impact on the profit margins. So moving on to forecasting the volumes of sales. So NetSuite Planning and Budgeting has the ability to extract the non-financial information, the historical sales volumes, as you can see the data up through to August 2021, from your systems which has those volumes loaded. So for example, we can hook up into like individual CRM systems or from like any demand generation system. And along with the other segmentations like my customers, which is in the rows, and the products, which is in the point of view, and also the company setup, which can be all extracted from the NetSuite ERP or your core finance systems. NetSuite Planning and Budgeting actually provides you an integrated platform to build the demand forecast. So the forecast that we are trying to plan from September 2021 through to December 2022. So here we are building a detailed demand forecast for Asus laptops, and we can select a different SKU to create a detailed demand for that. And we are trying to create the detailed demand forecast for the customer segment enterprises. So these templates are pretty flexible in nature because it allows you to create the demand forecast for the various customer segments. So for example, if I choose mid-market, that will give me the demand forecast for the customers relevant to the mid-market section for the Asus laptop SKU. So I will switch back to the enterprise customer segment because I would want to create a detailed demand forecast for the customers in the enterprise segment. So what we are trying to do here is that we are trying to leverage the statistical time series methods to build a demand forecast from September 2021 through to August 2020 through to December 2022. And we can easily do that with a few clicks using the NetSuite Planning and Budgeting predictive planning engine. So what the predictive planning does is that it goes back in time to understand the pattern of historical data, and based on which the system will suggest a few predictions, including the best and the worst cases, as you can see here, and also the accuracy of the forecasts. And I can literally run this prediction for any and every combination of the customers and the products. So here, what I will do is that I will consider one of these predictions, say, for example, for the customer Abbott Corporations, which shows the historical sales, including like the seasonality pattern of the historical sales. And with the blue line, that is the prediction in the future starting September 2021, I can bake that prediction into my base forecast. And once I save that information into the base forecast, this will automatically multiply the volumes of demand with the pricing, which was shown in the first workbench, and it'll calculate the profit margin and aggregate the margin across all the customers in the customer segment, across all the products to the product segments, and it will show the impact right at the subsidiary level, which we will see shortly. What it also does is it generates a detailed demand forecast, which is broken down by individual products and the individual customers within a particular segment. And in this scenario, we can see that for the Asus laptops, in the month of September, based on the assumptions that we have chosen as has been suggested by the system, the overall demand for Asus laptops in the month of September 2021 is 5,986 units, which automatically flows in through to the supply plan, which is shown in the next workbench. And the supply planning workbench, based on the demand that we need to meet and the safety stock that we need to maintain, we can build up our assumption of orders and replenishments, like the lead times and the back orders, etc., which shows how much we would need to purchase and what would be my final inventory snapshots. And this essentially also shows the health of the supply plan and all the relevant KPIs. For example, it measures the inventory levels, the customer SLA, like all the fulfillment, and also the SKU fill rate, which essentially means how much inventory we are buying as a result of like all those purchases we are making versus how much we are actually like selling off, and all of which are tied to the financial KPIs. So starting with the financial impact of all these assumptions of my demand and the forecast, the first impact I readily see is the detailed gross margin, which is built based on the different items or the SKUs that we sell, and it is broken down by the individual like segments of my product. And I can also look at my individual gross margin analysis by the customers as well. And eventually this information gets automatically built in my pro forma income statement. And since NetSuite planning and budgeting helps to build a three-way linked pro forma where the income statement drives the balance sheet and the cash flow, I automatically have my cash flow seamlessly created as a part of the changes to the income statement, which is created by the assumptions of my demand and the supply. I can also see the analysis of my profitability broken down by the KPIs, which shows the gross margin and the operating margin, but it also breaks each individual KPI, for example, the revenues, by the different customer segments and the product segments. For example, if I'm looking at my FY 2021 forecast with August data being actualized and everything after August is my forecasted data, I can see that at a year-to-date level, I'm incurring an operating margin of 8.5%. But when I look at the customer segmentation breakup of my revenue, I can break down the customer segmentation into the individual customers. I can also break down the revenue by the individual product segments and the SKUs that we sell into those segments. I can also break down the expenses. And in addition to the profitability, it also shows me how much cash is actually being generated from the business in this graphical view of my cash inflow and outflow. So with that information in mind, what I would do is that now I will spin up a new scenario called COVID-19 for the United States subsidiary, because I really want to test my assumptions. What will happen in a stage 2 lockdown if my shipments are blocked by 4 weeks? So I have created this base forecast based on the different assumptions of my volumes and my supply plans. And I'm going to spin up a sandbox scenario called COVID-19. And within the COVID-19 scenario, what will happen is that as soon as I launch this particular workbench to spin up the sandbox, it copies all the assumptions from my base forecast scenario. And along with the financial information, it shows me the data side by side against my base forecast. So here I have also created other scenarios to test out my assumptions. For example, what is my base case forecast and what happens if, say, for example, there's a lockdown of, say, 8 weeks, right? So in this scenario, I would change some of the assumptions for the COVID-19 scenario that I just created. And I will also show you the capability of how I can adjust the forecast from a top-down perspective and see the impact on the financials, right? So what I will do is that I will navigate back to the workbench, the sales and integrated planning workbench. And here I would navigate to the demand forecast workbench, and I would want to adjust the forecast from a top-down perspective. So here I see that it has broken down the demand by the customers and the customer segments, and also the items by the item segments. So some of these shipments that is actually being, that might be under question would be the laptops, because they're being shipped from another foreign location. And I foresee that due to the lockdown, I might need to readjust my forecast by, I need to put a downside to my forecast by 10%. So instead of that 69,475 units, I will adjust the forecast down by 20%. And once I put a downside to my forecast by 20%, readily I can see that it has reforecasted my new value to 55,580 units. And I will apply these changes across all the customer segments applicable for the laptop product. What the system then does is that it automatically readjusts or recalibrates the forecast of the 55,580 units based on the weightages of the forecast, which we have created from the detailed bottom-up version. And it'll realign all those forecasts based on those weightages. So as you can see here is that the forecast has been adjusted to 55,580 units for the laptop category of products across all customers. What I also foresee that due to the lack of availability of the labor workforce, that might also increase my operational expenses, particularly my labor overheads. So I'd also want to adjust my labor by increasing it by another 20%. So what I do here is that I would go to adjust my overheads, and I would increase it by 10% across all the departments. So here, what I'm doing is that I'm looking at my operating expenses across all the departments. And instead of the 11 million of my OPEX, I foresee that there will be a shortage of labor, as a result of which I would want to increase my labor expenses by another 25%. So that brings it to 14.8 million. And once I apply all these changes to my demand as well as my overheads, what the system does is it consolidates all this information and shows the impact readily onto the financials. So now with my total operating expenditure set at 14.8 million, and I have reduced my laptop forecast by 10% to 55,000 units in FY 2021. Let me go and see what impact it has on the new scenario of COVID-19. Actually, I missed a step. I should have changed my template to the COVID-19 scenario, but I forgot to do that step, and I rather chose the forecast scenario. So as you can see that because I've made all the changes in the forecast scenario, if I look at my margins between the base forecast and between the COVID-19 forecast, I can readily see that it has changed my operating margin by a few percentages, right? So this is the impact that the NetSuite planning and budgeting can have on your business processes. It really allows you to create very detailed budgets based on all the customers and the products and the SKUs. But what it also does is it allows you to translate that impact of those business drivers onto your financials, and you can readily see that impact right away in one particular scheme, in one particular screen, and you can do a very comprehensive variance analysis across all those scenarios that you've created. So, for example, if I look at my actual versus base and the budget versus base case, as well as my actual and my budget versus COVID-19, I can see all of them in one single pane of view. So with that, what I would want to summarize is using NetSuite planning and budgeting, we are seeing businesses today are helping this platform, particularly like the scenario modeling engine and like the predictive analytics engine, to plan literally every day and gain useful insights from the data and take their businesses to the next level. So that concludes my demonstration. And with that, I'll hand it over back to Don.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Sanjoy. So that's yeah, it was fantastic. So I think, again, the point, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, the tools are available now where any size organization can really do a lot. And that was just a quick example. One thing to think about is, I mean, obviously every business is different, right? Every business model is different. So when you look at tools like this, you really want to think about what you need to forecast and what you need to plan, what level you want to go to. And that's where we work with clients a lot on that part. And then with the Oracle-NetSuite team on actually getting that set up and ready to go in planning and budgeting. And you can start simple, and that's what we usually recommend. And then you as you get used to it and you get more data, you can add more of that complexity over time and get more and more value. So it's just a continuous improvement type of thing. Anyway, so I think we've got another poll. Candace, do you want to put up the poll real quick? And then we're happy to take some questions now, if you like, or you can do it via the chat, or you can ask a question, or if you would like a follow-up later, we're happy to do that as well. So we can either do that in person or via another Zoom call if people want more detail, because it does tend to get very business specific. Everybody's different. So let us know if any questions. All right, we do have a first question. So if you have NetSuite ERP, can you drill back to NetSuite from NetSuite planning and budgeting? So Sanjoy, I think that's a question for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the short answer is yes. So be it any system on the cloud or any on-premise system, we can, of course, drill back to the source of the data. And it does not just is limited to the NetSuite ERP. We can drill into any source system that we extract the data from.
Yeah, and let me add some. I mean, obviously, we all have different systems, and data comes from different places. You can also use Excel to connect to the planning and budgeting. So if that's a method you're familiar with, you can have a direct connection there to input data. So, or you can push data in from different sources automatically. So there's lots of different ways to do it. It's really that's when you want to kind of do an analysis up front and see what the end goals are and where the data can come from, and then you can make the best decisions about how to get the information in there so you can get it out with some added value. Oops, another question here. So second question, in addition to sales and operational planning, can NetSuite Planning and Budgeting handle headcount planning, cash flow forecasting, and analysis? Yes, it certainly can. I don't know, Sanjay, do you want to add something to that?
Absolutely. I mean, we understand that NetSuite Planning provides all the needs of the financial planning that businesses have, be it headcount, sales and operations planning, planning for the different resources and the services that you provide, including all the projects that you execute on behalf of the customers as well as internal, and what impact that has on the financials, the three-welling P&L, balance sheet, which drives the cash flow, which in today's scenario, every businesses want to have good grip on. So NetSuite Planning and Budgeting helps you to work with those assumptions to translate those assumptions into the financials.
So a way to think about it, this is one of the ways we think about it at OnePacific. It's really it's a business modeling tool. So you ask about headcount, right? So if I add more headcount in a certain area, that might drive, if it's sales, for example, if I add more salespeople, that drives more meetings, that drives more leads, more opportunities, and that's going to flow through the whole business as maybe higher demand, which is going to impact revenue. So it's a way to model the business. So again, that's why you want to think about it up front. What are your business drivers? It might be headcount, it might be shipping, as we just looked at, or other things. So it's almost like a digital twin of the business if you want to go to that level of detail. Oh, that's a good question. So yeah, can we use Excel as a front end? So Sanjay, there is a tool for that. What's it called?
The Excel Smart View.
Smart View,
Smart View.
You know better than I do.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tom. So essentially, Smart View is the MS Office add-in to hook up to the cloud. And whatever workbenches that I had executed on the web using the browser today, you can do all the work in Excel. And we know that like the financial guys, the Office of Finance, they just love Excel, and I've seen this used in literally just in Excel. And we can do all sort of analysis in Excel. So it's just not like being limited to like using the features of NSPT. You can just use Excel just for the other features of Excel itself. So you can mix a lot of good, like a lot of goodness from both the worlds, the Excel world and the NSPT world, to create really, really powerful analysis in Excel itself.
Okay, another question. Can I input my budget in a different currency, like Hong Kong dollars, Chinese, renminbi, and have my budget reports automatically generated in USD?
Yeah, so we can set up multiple exchange rates in the system, and we can enter the data, budgets, forecast, or plan in those different exchange rates. And you can help to set one particular reporting currencies, which will help to translate those input currencies at a particular nominated rate. So for actual data, we can extract the actual rates from the core finance system. But for forecasting and budgeting data, that's where it like gets a bit creative, because you can like define your own forecasted rates depending on how you you sort of think the market will move. And also we can do an analysis like based on the constant currency. So for example, if you want to understand the organic growth of the business outside of the FX impacts, you can like define those particular constant currencies based on which you can see the organic growth of the business as well. I mean, there are a host of possibilities.
Yeah, and we have clients that are using it for, it's a reporting, you can do a lot of reporting of it as well. So for example, if you have a complex corporate structure with part ownership and things like that, the tool is an excellent way to model that out and to report against that when you have different owners and things like that. So that's another, it's a full-on reporting, or it can be used for that as well. So. Any other questions? Okay, I think we're almost done with the poll. No, thank you, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to do the poll. So I think if we don't have any more questions, I think we'll go ahead and end it here. It's just about on time, actually, about 45 minutes. So yeah, thanks for joining us. Hopefully it was interesting. I think, again, just to kind of iterate where we started with, we're all seeing a lot more activity and or a rebirth, maybe of scenario planning in these current times. And I think when you play with it and you use it, if you can incorporate it into an ongoing cycle, it does add a lot of value. And it gets a lot more people involved in thinking about on a regular basis how the business works and what drives the business. And then I said the predictive analytics, I think we saw from what Sanjoy showed, it's built right in to the tool. You don't have to have a data scientist around to figure your stuff out for you. You can model it out yourself. And then with a click of the button, you can incorporate the prediction back into your scenario and your plans if you want to. So, and then you can run multiple versions of that. And I think that's where trying to do this stuff in Excel, you can see it gets too complex too fast. So having the tool manage it for you makes it a lot easier for organizations to do it. So yeah, so again, thanks everybody, and happy to do, if you want more detail, because I know this was, every business is different. We can, we love doing this stuff, and we can spend some time with you talking about how your business works and how something like this could add some value. So thanks, and have a fantastic weekend. And thanks, Sanjoy, for driving the system. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Don. Thanks, everyone.